There's not much worse you can do for your fuel mileage than getting an aftermarket intake. What do I mean by that? Well, it's because you're going to be in throttle all the time because you just want to hear the cool sounds that it makes. Trust me, ask me how I know. Either way, we got a brand new Injen Evolution intake that we're going to be taking a look at today. So we can unbox it, take a look, and let you know what to expect if you go ahead and pick up an Injen Evolution intake for yourself. That way, you're not surprised when you get it and you know what you're getting and you're going to feel confident with that next purchase of parts for your car. I'm Giles from Martini Works. Welcome to Martini Works Unbox. Let's go ahead, get this thing open. So Injen has been around for a couple of years now, starting in 1998. They are known for manufacturing things like intakes, exhausts, intercoolers, and a bunch of other performance parts for vehicles out there. The Injen Evolution intake being one of the newer lines of product that they brought to their lineup. So right out of the box here, we got our couplers. These are nice silicone couplers that we have to install our intake with. Ton of packaging on here. We got our filter, which we will touch on in just a second, but what we really want to take a look at is the actual intake portion itself. So here we have a couple parts to this bad boy. This intake specifically is for an FK8 Honda Civic Type R. Making sure we got nothing else in here, just a few pieces. Good, got it. Try not to make a mess. There we go. So here we have all the pieces for this intake laid out right here. We have our coupler, we have our intake tube itself, we have the intake box, and of course we have our filter. Now the Evolution intake is designed to be obviously a direct fit intake upgrade for your car, and it is a bit different from some of what they would call their standard intakes, something like their SP line or their short ram intake line. This is going to be a little bit different. It is a little more involved. First difference and first things first, this is a plastic intake, meaning that the actual intake tube and the box that's included with it is made from plastic. They use a process that's called rotomolding. So this is roto-molded polyethylene plastic. Now, essentially what rotomolding is the manufacturing process to be able to produce hollow plastic parts. Essentially what they do is add the plastic to a mold that's spinning while everything is curing. What this does is allows for a very, very smooth finish on the inside of the intake tube here and the intake box. Obviously, something that you're going to want for an intake or air moving through. You don't want anything obstructing that airflow. You'd be surprised as to how much air is affected by even the slightest little bump or grit or anything like that, imperfection in the actual finish of it. The rotomolding actually helps quite a bit with that. Along with that, they're also able to produce pretty complex shapes with that process, as well as making everything seamless. You won't really find a seam on the inside here. It makes everything seamless and smooth, creates some complex shapes like this box here, and especially our intake tube itself. Moving on to the actual air filter itself here, this uses a dry filter compared to some of their other models that use an actual oiled intake filter. So this is their super nano web dry filter that comes with all of the Evolution style intakes. Of course, this can be replaced. They do offer the replacement filters as well, but this is what you're going to get with the Evolution specifically. Some of their other models, like I said, they do require an oiled filter, which does require a bit more maintenance and upkeep to take care of. You got to keep it oiled, you got to keep it clean, things like that. So this is a dry filter. You don't have to worry about that. Doesn't require nearly as much maintenance. Just put it on there, make sure it stays clean, and then if you need to replace it, you can swap it out with a replacement filter down the road. Now, one of the reasons as to why these intakes do cost a little bit more is this guy right here. So if you look at some of their other intake lines, you notice that one thing, you do get an aluminum intake tube. You also notice that it is an exposed filter kind of just sitting in the engine bay, especially if you're looking at something like what's considered their short ram intakes. A lot of time people call those like the hot air intakes because it's just an open filter sitting inside the engine bay. It's where a lot of the debate comes from when it comes to aftermarket intakes and whether or not they're beneficial for performance and all that kind of jazz. But the reason that the Evolution does cost a little bit more over those lines is this guy right here. So this is going to help decrease the amount of, I guess, heat soak, you could call it, or just radiant air coming from the engine to get sucked into the intake. You're going to keep your air temps just a little bit lower with something like this to protect a bunch of that heat coming in. as well as the actual construction of this. The plastic does help mitigate the amount of heat coming in as well. Now with this intake specifically for the FK8 Honda Civic Type R, they are noting that you should expect about a 13 horsepower increase in performance with an 18 foot-pound of torque increase in performance with this intake. Now another thing that they say with the Evolution series or the Evolution intake is that it is meant to work with the stock calibration. One of those things meaning that you're not going to get a check engine light when you install this intake. The other thing that they mean by that, from what it sounds like, is that you should expect those type of performance gains right out of the box. No tuning required. Now, does that actually happen? We don't have a dyno here to really test or prove that, but what I can say is that when you do go with an aftermarket intake, especially when you pair that with like an exhaust or a downpipe or any other bolt-on parts, you're going to get a lot more out of that, or you can expect a lot more out of that if you do pair it with some sort of tune. You need to tell the computer what to do with that. Sounds like they tried to make it the best that they possibly could to be able to work within those stock parameters that the car has to be able to get a decent increase in horsepower, but we won't know that until we put it on the car. And finally, the last thing about this intake, and it's a big one, and I'm so sorry for those that it affects, but unfortunately this intake as of right now is not carb legal. What does that mean? Well, for you people that live in California, it is not legally able to be put on your car. But that's just kind of how it goes, especially right now with the laws of everything like that. But just so you know, there are some intakes out there that are carb legal. This unfortunately is not one of them. So sorry, California. Maybe move to a place like Wisconsin where they don't care what you do to your vehicle. As of right now, this intake specifically, at least for the FK8 Type R, is running right around $300 to $310, which when it comes to a quality performance intake really isn't all that bad. You're getting the actual box itself to kind of keep a bunch of that heat out. It does fit up very nice. There shouldn't be any modifications required whatsoever. There aren't that many parts at all to really install. And when it comes to that platform of vehicle, everything is kind of right there. The installation should be pretty straightforward and simple. So that is the Injen Evolution intake, at least a good look at it. If you'd like us to do a comparison to the stock intake sound to this aftermarket intake sound, let us know down in the comments below. We can see what we could do there. Other than that, if you're at all interested in the Injen Evolution intake, this one specifically, or any other parts from Injen intakes, exhaust, whatever it might be, make sure to check it out over at martiniworks.com. I'm Giles. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you later.